So, we hear the word democracy thrown around constantly, right?
Yeah.
News, politics, just everywhere.
Absolutely everywhere.
And it feels like this really simple core idea. But honestly, when you start to dig into it, the actual meaning, where it came from, all the different shapes it's taken, well, it's way more complex
Yeah.
and way more interesting than you might think.
Definitely. It's anything but simple when you peel back the layers.
So today, that's our plan. We're taking a real deep dive into democracy itself. What is it, really? Where did it start? How has it actually worked in practice? And maybe most importantly, what are the big challenges it's facing right now?
Exactly. Our mission really is to sift through our sources, which give a pretty comprehensive look at democracy, its history, the theories behind it, how it plays out in the real world, and pull out the key stuff.
Yeah, cut through the noise, maybe give you a solid foundation, and hopefully, spark a few of those aha moments.
Right, so you feel genuinely informed, not just hearing the buzzword, but understanding what's underneath.
Okay, let's get into it then. Before we jump into the history, which is fascinating, let's try and nail down what we even mean by democracy. Because, like you said, it's not just one thing.
It really isn't. I mean, the word itself, that's straightforward enough. Ancient Greek, demos people, and kratos, rule.
Rule of the people. Simple.
Seems simple, but how do the people rule? Which people count? That's where it gets tricky. Our sources, they show this huge spectrum.
A spectrum.
Okay, so on one end, you've got what you might call a minimalist definition. Basically, democracy is just where rulers get picked through competitive elections. That's it.
Just elections. Okay.
But then, on the other end, the maximalist view, well, that's much bigger. It's elections, plus all these guarantees, civil liberties, human rights, free speech, freedom to assemble, property rights, consent to the governed, full voting rights.
And protecting minorities, too, right? That
Yeah.
seems crucial.
Absolutely crucial. Protections for minority rights are key in that maximalist view. And the gap between those two definitions, it's massive. Explains why one study found, get this, 2,234 adjectives used with the word democracy in English.
2,000. Wow. Okay, so that really drives home the complexity. If there isn't one single definition everyone agrees on, are there some, core principles, things that usually come up?
Yeah, definitely. There are common threads. One big one is upward control, the idea that power, sovereignty really flows up from the people. It's not just theoretical. It means people having real influence, maybe locally first.
Okay, power from below makes sense.
The political equality, each person's voice, their vote should count the same. And, of course, things like legal equality, political freedom, rule of law, those are almost always seen as fundamental building blocks.
You mentioned minority rights earlier. That seems like a built-in tension with rule of the people, doesn't it? Majority rule can be tricky.
Oh, absolutely. It's a central challenge.
Yeah.
Majority rule is dominant, yes, but without safeguards, you risk what's called the tyranny of the majority.
Where 51% can just impose its will on the other 49%.
Exactly. Imagine them voting away fundamental rights. So in what we call liberal democracies, you usually have things like a constitution, independent courts,
Right.
a Supreme Court, perhaps, that act as a check.
Hmm.
They limit what the majority can do to protect everyone's basic rights, like free speech, even if it's unpopular.
Right, a crucial protection. And another point of confusion often is the difference between a republic and a democracy. People use them interchangeably.
Yeah, they do, but they aren't quite the same thing, historically speaking. A republic, classically, just meant a government without a monarch.
No king or queen.
Right. It could be democratic, sure, because of the consent to the governed idea, but it could also be an aristocracy. Modern usage is a bit different today. A republic usually implies an elected head of state. But the key is, a democracy can be a republic, like the U.S.
Or it can be a constitutional monarchy, like the UK.
Precisely, where the monarch is mostly symbolic. So it's not an either situation. Different classifications, really.
Okay, this is where, for me, it gets really fascinating. The history. Because democracy, it turns out, isn't some modern Western invention. Its roots are way older and more global than I think most of us realize.
That's such an important point. Our sources really emphasize this. Democratic ways of making decisions, like assemblies, they seem to pop up organically all over the world in societies that had zero contact with each other. It's like a fundamental human impulse, almost.
Not just something exported from Greece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the term democracy that did emerge in ancient Greece, specifically the city-states like Athens around the 5th century BC.
Right, Athens. And Cleisthenes, the father of Athenian democracy.
That's the one. And their system was direct democracy.
Mm.
Citizens, well, the ones who qualified actually showed up, debated, and voted on laws themselves. No representatives from anything.
They even filled some offices by lottery, right? Random selection.
Yeah, quite a few. And it's a huge, but who counted as a citizen? It was incredibly restrictive. No women, no slaves, no foreigners, not even young men. Maybe only 1 in 4 people living there actually qualified.
1 in 4. That's sobering. Really highlights the exclusion.
It does. But looking beyond Greece, you find these incredible pockets of democratic practice. You mentioned global origins.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the Americas.
Okay.
The Iroquois Confederacy.
Mm-hmm.
They developed this really sophisticated democratic society, possibly way back in the 12th century, maybe 1142.
Yeah.
And get this, it's considered the world's oldest standing representative democracy.
Wait, representative, not direct, and that old.
That's what the sources suggest. It
What?
totally challenges the narrative that representative democracy began much later in Europe or the U.S., shows these complex systems could arise independently.
That is incredible. Okay, jumping forward a bit, back to Europe. Magna Carta, England, 1215. That's always cited as a big step.
A huge step.
Yeah.
It wasn't democracy overnight, of course, but it limited the king's power, protected certain rights, and kind of paved the way for representative bodies, like Simon de Montfort's parliament a bit later. It started that slow shift towards needing the consent of, well, at least some of the governed.
A gradual process.
Very gradual. And that English path continued, through the Civil War, the Glorious Revolution in 1688, the Bill of Rights in 1689. These events really cemented Parliament's power over the monarch, guaranteed regular elections, free speech in Parliament.
And this is where John Locke comes in. His ideas seem so central.
Absolutely critical. Locke's thinking on natural rights, life, liberty, property, and the idea that government legitimacy comes from the consent of the governed.
Yeah.
That's the bedrock of modern liberal democracy. Hugely influential on the American founders of the French Revolution.
His influence is massive. But you know what's really surprising? Something I hadn't heard much about before digging into this.
Go on.
The Corsican Republic, mid-18th century, 1755. They adopted this Enlightenment-inspired democratic constitution
Right.
that included female suffrage for all women over 25.
In 1755.
Yeah, decades, even centuries before most other places even considered it. It just shows how these radical ideas can pop up in unexpected places, completely changes the timeline we usually think about.
That is absolutely astonishing. Wow. Okay, so then we get to the late 18th century, a pivotal time. The U.S. Constitution in 1787, oldest surviving written one.
Right, setting up an elected government, protecting rights, but with major caveats.
Huge caveats. Didn't end slavery, obviously. And voting rights. Left to the states, mostly meaning white male property owners at first. Full voting rights for everyone.
Yeah.
That took until 1965, really.
A long, long struggle. Then the French Revolution, 1789, Declaration of the Rights of Man.
Another landmark moment. And then, fast forward a century, 1893, New Zealand becomes the first country after that Corsican experiment to grant universal active female suffrage. A major milestone.
So this whole journey from ancient assemblies to 19th century suffrage, it just underscores that democracy isn't one thing. It's this evolving spectrum. Which brings us more to the modern era, the 20th and 21st centuries. What's the picture been like?
Well, it's been described in terms of waves. Waves of democratization like after World War I or during decolonization when many new nations emerged.
More countries becoming democratic.
Right. But also waves of democratic regression. Backsliding. We saw it in the 20s and 30s, the 60s and 70s, and particularly worryingly since about 2010 or so.
We'll come back to that backsliding. But it's interesting, even the UN declared democracy a kind of mandate, right?
Yeah, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, Article 21 says, "The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government." Pretty clear statement.
Yet, you said less than half the world lives in a democracy now, according to some metrics.
As of 2022, yes. Studies like VDEM show declines in rights and liberties have outnumbered improvements consistently since around 2005. It's a concerning trend. Makes understanding the types of democracy even more vital.
Okay, let's break down some of those types, the basic governmental forms first.
Sure. So the fundamental distinction is probably between direct democracy and representative democracy.
Direct is. People vote on laws themselves.
Exactly, like those Swiss cantons or maybe New England town meetings in the U.S. Referendums are a tool of direct democracy. You, the citizen, decide directly.
Elect and represent.
That's what most large modern democracies are. You elect officials, representatives, to make decisions for you.
And within representative, there are different systems.
Right. Key ones are parliamentary systems. Think the UK, Canada, Germany. The government, the executive branch, emerges from and is accountable to the legislature, the parliament. The prime minister can usually be kicked out by a vote of no confidence.
And the alternative.
Presidential systems, like the United States or Brazil. The public elects a president separately from the legislature. That president is both head of state and head of government, usually for a fixed term. There's a stricter separation of powers.
Which can lead to deadlock sometimes, right? President from one party, legislature controlled by another.
Exactly. That's a known potential downside.
Yeah.
There are also hybrid semi-presidential systems, like France, that mix elements of both.
Okay, those are the big structural ones. But you mentioned incredible diversity earlier. What other ways are democracies categorized? What other flavors are there?
Oh, there's so many ways to slice it. It really shows the adaptability. You have liberal democracy, which specifically emphasizes constitutional limits and protecting individual and minority rights. That's a really important qualifier.
So, majority rule, but with strong guardrails.
Precisely. Then you have concepts like sortition, using random selection, like we mentioned with Athens and modern juries, to form decision-making bodies. The idea is to get a real cross-section of people, bypassing political ambition or lobbying.
That's radical.
Yeah.
And fascinating. What else?
Well, there's deliberative democracy. This one's less about the structure and more about the process. It argues that for a decision to be truly democratic and legitimate, it needs to come after genuine, reasoned discussion among equals, not just casting a vote based on gut feeling or misinformation.
So the quality of the debate matters as much as the vote itself.
Exactly. Things like citizens' assemblies that are popping up more now. They're an attempt to put deliberative democracy into practice. Get regular people, give them balanced information, let them discuss and recommend policy.
It really paints democracy as much more than just voting, doesn't it? Which leads to the philosophical side. What are the big ideas behind these different approaches?
Philosophers have been debating this forever. Aristotle saw good and bad versions. Later Republican thinkers, like Montesquieu, were often skeptical, arguing democracy really only worked in small states. They worried big ones would just collapse internally.
So the U.S. being so large was kind of an experiment against that idea.
In many ways, yes. Could a large republic with checks and balances actually survive? That was a key question. Fast forward to more contemporary theory.
Yeah.
You get ideas like polyarchy from Robert Dahl. It's less about a perfect ideal and more about describing how real-world democracies function when they have certain institutions, free elections, freedom of speech, association, etc. It recognizes things like inequality can stop a full polyarchy, but it gives us criteria to assess actual systems.
In a more practical framework.
Right. And distinct from, say, purely aggregative views that just focus on adding up votes or the deliberative view focusing on discussion, different lenses to look through.
Okay, so bringing this all together for today, democracy is clearly not static. It changes, it adapts, but it also faces some serious headwinds right now.
That's the crux of it. We see periods of democratization where countries move towards democracy, often linked to things like peace, economic growth, rising living standards. People start valuing self-expression more.
Interesting drivers. What about that weapons theory you mentioned?
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating, kind of provocative one. Some research suggests democracy has a better chance when the main military tools are things individuals can easily...
It's people a voice,
But it often lacks effective truth filters. Misinformation, disinformation, conspiracy theories. They can spread like wildfire online. Studies even show false stories sometimes travel faster and wider than true ones. That seriously messes with the informed citizen ideal. How do you make good choices when you can't even agree on basic facts?
It's a massive challenge. So, faced with all this, what can actually be done? Are there ways to promote or strengthen democracy?
Yes, people are working on and debating solutions. Things like voting advice tools to help people understand candidate platforms. More emphasis on participatory democracy, like those citizens' assemblies we talked about. Youth suffrage, better civic education in schools.
Practical stuff.
Yeah, and structural things, too. Making it easier for new political parties to emerge so people feel they have real choices. Making voting systems more proportional so fewer votes feel wasted. Some even argue for reducing presidentialism, shifting power towards parliaments to maybe avoid some of that gridlock and winner-take-all dynamic. Lots of ideas out there.
What an absolutely incredible and sometimes sobering journey we've taken from these ancient, scattered roots of people trying to govern themselves through all the evolving definitions and diverse forms, to the very real, very complex challenges democracy faces today. The media landscape, this trend of autocratization, it's so clear it's not some finished product, is it? It's this living, breathing, and, yeah, often fragile thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that fragility, combined with its enduring appeal, maybe leads us to a final thought for you, listening to this. Considering everything we've discussed, the sheer variety of democratic experiments throughout history, these ongoing waves of autocratization, the challenges of our digital age with information overload and these echo chambers, how should we think about democratic participation now? How can we, as citizens trying to be informed, reimagine our roles to ensure it remains truly rule by the people and not just rule over the people? What element for you feels most essential to protect or maybe even reinvent moving forward?
Really powerful questions to chew on. We hope this deep dive has given you plenty to think about. We encourage you to keep exploring, stay curious about this vital topic. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.